Well, welcome guys to our special bonus episode of the Cruise Corner podcast. I'm your co-host Jack Carter, and I'm super excited to say that I'm joined by HX Expeditions Chief Scientist Verena Meraldi. Verena, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Our pleasure. So this episode is going to be a little bit of an opportunity to kind of explore the life of a chief scientist with a cruise line and look into your background and how the sort of the onboard citizen science offering on cruise ships has evolved in recent years and why that's such an exciting selling point for expedition cruise lines. But first, I've got some Verena facts here that I'm going to read out so our listeners kind of acquaint themselves with you and your expertise. So you were the first chief scientist to work for a cruise line.
Yes.
You're born in Mexico City, which is where you began your scientific career, before moving to the University of Lausanne, which is where you completed a Ph.D. in Immunology in 2002. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Good. So far, so good. And you made your first trip to Antarctica in 2007.
Yes.
Amazing. How many times have you been back since, do you know?
Difficult to tell. I never really counted them, but yeah, I've been going on a yearly basis since 2007, so at least 20.
Yeah, okay. Well, before we kind of really get into that, can you kind of give us some insight into your role with HX Expeditions and what a normal day or a normal week might look like for you?
Well, again, as I started on board working as a lecturer and contributing to the onboard program for the guests, we started realizing that we could do much more than just providing lectures to the guests. And particularly if you consider that we are operating in big ships that carry 400 passengers. And because of the way we operate in Antarctica, for example, you cannot bring more than 100 people ashore at one given time. So you need to provide things to do for the rest of the guests that you have on board. And the educational program plays a very important part in that. And the other thing is you do have a captive audience on board a ship. They are not going anywhere. So you better make the most. Exactly. Better make the most of their time with you to really explain everything about the place that they are about to visit. So we started thinking about that. We decided that we could not just do that on the side. We needed somebody to spearhead that program because it involved not only in equipping our ships, but also getting the right staff to run the science centers that we put on the ships, but also establishing collaborations with the research institutions and discussing what kind of projects would be beneficial for them to run from such a platform, but at the same time beneficial for our guests to understand why they are on board and doing science in such areas. So it's...
And there's working laboratories on these ships?
Yes, we do. We have small laboratories. We have equipment such as microscopes. In some of them, we even have molecular biology equipment so that some of the researchers can start analyzing their data straight on the ship.
What is it that they're researching? What are they? What's their mission? What's their goal?
It's very wide. We support projects studying whale behavior and also taking biopsies to understand how they are doing healthy-wise. We support the penguin surveys. We collect plankton to see how melting water is impacting the distribution of plankton. As we mentioned on our previous episode, plankton is the base of every food web, so super important to understand if it's changing and how. What else are we supporting? We are studying the growth of snow algae in Antarctica and other snow-covered areas in the Arctic. which is very important to also understand the climate change. So we're trying to support very different research projects that will help guests understand the importance of protecting the places that we bring them to as well.
Amazing. So when you were doing your PhD in Switzerland, did you ever think that you would be using all this knowledge and expertise on a cruise ship or for a cruise line?
No. No, I definitely didn't. I really enjoyed the work in a bench, in a lab. I did a lot of molecular biology, a lot of cell tissue culture. And I never even crossed my mind that I would one day run the science and education program for a cruise.
So how did your world collide with HX Expeditions?
By chance, really. I quit research because I got my children, my two fabulous boys, and I wanted to spend time with them. But then my brother started working for, back in the days, Hurtigruten as a lecturer. Yeah. And living in Switzerland in the French-speaking part, I had to learn French. And my brother was asked if he could also provide or held his lectures on board in French. And he said, I can't, but my sister. And that's how I really started in Hurtigruten. I think I have lectured since 2007, like 3 times in French.
Yeah.
But that was really the beginning of a very, very nice history for me, career. Yes.
So this whole thing we're talking about has been kind of encapsulated by this term citizen science, and it's something that the expedition sector has really owned in recent years. To any agents or cruise line execs who might be listening or watching this podcast episode right now, can you help sort of define what we mean by citizen science, and how can that foster more deeper connections between the guests and these vulnerable destinations?
Well, citizen science, there are many different projects that are called citizen science per se. For us, it's just a part of our science and education program, but it is an incredible tool to empower people to do science without having a science degree or without having to understand the whole concept. It is still a way to highlight things that are important, to explain why, for example, bird monitoring needs to be done not only once, but throughout the years and throughout the season, so that you understand their movements, if they are changing, their distribution, and then you can extrapolate all of that in time. And by introducing the citizen science projects to guests, you can give them this basic background and explain why their personal data points will be so important. So it's a way of explaining why we should all be citizen science and protecting our planet. We only have one planet. So
there are some critics to expedition cruising or tourism in general that goes to the regions like the Galapagos or Antarctica, which are vulnerable from a kind of climate change perspective. I mean, we've just done an episode about how travel agents can grow and sell more expedition holidays. So I think it's only right, as from a responsibility perspective, that we talk about the impact of tourism in these regions. I mean, what do you say to people who might be a little bit cautious or have maybe a negative perception of bringing tourists to these areas? I mean, what is it that you're doing to give back and to restore the destinations?
It's true. Some people may ask themselves, should we be going to these places? But we as a humankind, we very often don't do anything, or we do not take action until we have experienced something ourselves, or we understand it, we've seen it ourselves. So it is important to explain why we are doing what we are doing. Transparency is very important. I think also we are one of the first companies to be so transparent as to publish an ESG report to put all our emissions and everything out in the open. But seeing is believing again. Seeing is believing, and explaining what changes are the ones that we can control, and how can we be a part of the solution and not the problem, is also an important part in this process of gaining consciousness of around the problem.
Sure. I think there's an interesting message there then for any travel agents who are listening to this, who have clients who might be concerned about the impact of their tourism to these areas, where it's a case of, like you just said, you need to sort of see how beautiful these landscapes are, but also get an idea and a sense of how at risk they can be if tourism isn't monitored, or if we live a certain way in a maybe more careless mindset. And I think that's really inspiring, isn't it?
Exactly. And if you put all of that together, the fact of having researchers on the vessels, inviting people to collect data, to be scientists and understand the place that they are visiting, it obviously has an effect on your way of life. I do hope that people will be a lot more careful on the way they consume everyday things when they get back home.
Yeah. We mentioned that you made your first trip to Antarctica in 2007.
Yes.
So what have been some of the most amazing, like exhilarating, life-changing moments of your time in places like Antarctica?
I could give you so many examples, but I think one of the most life-changing experience I have had in Antarctica is listening to the cacophony of sounds, natural sounds in Antarctica, the silence,
yeah,
if you want to call it like that. You hear the birds in the distance, you see the ice cracking, you see the wind, you hear the wind, the waves, the whales coming out for breath. And no human sound. Is just so touching. It really gives me how do you call them?
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps every time.
Well, I think people might have a picture of Antarctica that it is this sort of a hugely vast but sort of desolate area, but it's full of life.
It is full of life for certain periods of time. I think in the dead of winter, there is very little life around Antarctica. So that is also why it is such an abundant place. It's animals that make Antarctica their home for breeding. They really have a very small window opportunity to do so. So yes, they come in huge numbers and use these very productive waters.
Sure. So just to close off this conversation then, so who would you think are the right kind of people for an expedition cruise? Who will kind of get the most out of this experience? Who should travel agents really be targeting? Is it everyone, or is there people who are more active? Is it people who have more an interest in wildlife? I mean, who would you say makes the ideal expedition guest?
I would say curious people who want to learn a lot and are not afraid to get their hands dirty. But if you ask me very deeply, I think all the people who don't believe in climate change should come and experience one such trip. And I think that is our biggest challenge, is to try to convert those 9 saggers.
Sure, good answer. I agree. Well, Verena, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know a bit more about you and your background and how you work with HX. So thank you so much again.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.